The first thing I noticed when I came home early wasn't the suitcase sitting by the door, or the porch light glowing at 3 in the morning. It was the silence. My house had always been a place of noise, the old refrigerator humming, the wooden stairs creaking, the clock in the hallway ticking louder than it should. But that night, everything was unnaturally still. I had been away for 6 weeks, working overseas, and I had surprised everyone by coming home 2 days ahead of schedule. I expected laughter, maybe a sleepy hug from my best friend Emma, who had agreed to house sit while I was gone. Instead, the moment she saw me standing in the doorway with my suitcase, the color drained from her face. She stared at me as if I were someone she had never seen before. Then her eyes flicked toward the staircase, and she whispered something that made my heart stop: "Don't go upstairs." Before we uncover what was waiting upstairs, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of people choosing to do the right thing when nobody is watching, please like this story, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can completely change a person's life. Emma and I had been friends since college. We had survived failed relationships, terrible jobs, broken down cars, and the kind of nights when neither of us had enough money for dinner but somehow laughed until our stomachs hurt. When I got the opportunity to work overseas, I worried about leaving my house empty. Emma volunteered immediately. She said she would water the plants, collect the mail, feed my elderly cat, Milo, and make sure nothing went wrong. I trusted her completely. She had a spare key, knew the alarm code, and had been inside my house hundreds of times. There was nothing strange about her being there. The first few weeks overseas were exhausting. My job involved long hours, unfamiliar cities, and constant pressure. Every evening, Emma would send me pictures of Milo sleeping on the couch or the flowers blooming in my backyard. She made me feel like home was still waiting for me. But about 10 days before my return, something changed. Her messages became shorter. When I called, she often said she was busy. Once, I heard a noise in the background and asked if someone else was there. She laughed and told me she had dropped a box. I believed her because trusting Emma had never been difficult. Then my work assignment suddenly ended early. I decided not to tell anyone. I wanted to surprise my family, and secretly, I wanted to surprise Emma too. I imagined walking through the front door, watching her jump in shock, and then laughing together about how badly she had been fooled. Instead, when I arrived just after midnight, I found her standing in the hallway with both hands trembling. She looked exhausted. Her hair was messy, her face pale, and there were dark circles beneath her eyes. She didn't ask how my flight was. She didn't even look happy to see me. She simply stepped in front of the staircase. I tried to joke about coming home early, but she didn't smile. That was when I noticed the sound. A faint thump came from upstairs. Emma heard it too. Her eyes widened. I felt every muscle in my body tighten. I asked who was upstairs, but she immediately shook her head and said nobody. The answer came too quickly. Too desperately. I had spent 6 weeks trusting her with everything I owned, and suddenly I couldn't trust a single word she said. I moved toward the stairs. Emma grabbed my arm. She wasn't strong enough to stop me, but there was something in her expression that made me pause. It wasn't guilt alone. It was fear. Real fear. The kind that doesn't come from being caught doing something wrong. The kind that comes from believing something terrible is about to happen. Then we heard another sound. This time, it was a cough. Someone was upstairs. My stomach dropped. I pulled my arm free and started climbing. Emma followed behind me, crying silently. The hallway upstairs was dark except for a thin line of light beneath the door of my guest bedroom. The door was normally kept open, but tonight it was locked. I reached for the handle. Emma whispered my name. I opened the door. And my entire understanding of the past 6 weeks changed. A woman was sitting on the edge of the bed. She looked frightened, thin, and completely exhausted. Her clothes were worn, her hands were shaking, and beside her was a small suitcase that looked as though it had been packed in a hurry. She stared at me with terrified eyes. I didn't recognize her. But she recognized me. She immediately stood and apologized. Emma rushed into the room and wrapped a blanket around the woman's shoulders. Then the truth came out slowly. Her name was Lily. She had once worked with Emma at a small restaurant downtown. Lily had lost her apartment after falling behind on rent when her mother became seriously ill. She had nowhere safe to go. The shelters near her workplace were full, and she was terrified of sleeping on the street. Emma had found her outside the restaurant one rainy evening. She had offered her food. Then a place to stay. But Emma didn't have a home of her own. So she had secretly brought Lily to my house. At first, Emma had planned for Lily to stay only 2 nights. Those 2 nights became 2 weeks. Emma had been afraid to tell me because she thought I would be angry. And I was. Not because Lily was there. Because Emma had lied. She had broken my trust and used my home without asking. I stood in that bedroom struggling with 2 completely different emotions. Part of me wanted to shout. Another part looked at Lily's trembling hands and realized that anger wasn't the only thing happening in that room. I asked why Lily was still hiding upstairs after all this time. Emma finally broke down. She admitted that Lily's mother had died 3 days earlier. Lily had been sitting upstairs for hours because she had nowhere else to go. The suitcase beside her contained everything she owned. That was the moment my anger collapsed into something quieter. I sat on the floor across from Lily. She apologized again, but I stopped her. I told her she didn't have to apologize for needing somewhere safe. Then I looked at Emma. I told her she should have trusted me enough to tell me the truth. Emma began crying harder. She said she had been afraid that if she asked for help, I would say no. And that sentence hurt more than anything else. Because friendship isn't just about knowing someone for years. It's about knowing what kind of person they are when life becomes difficult. I had spent years telling Emma she could call me anytime, for anything. Yet when someone truly needed help, she had been too afraid to believe me. We stayed awake until sunrise. We talked about everything, the lies, the fear, the misunderstanding, and the woman sitting quietly beneath a blanket in my guest room. By morning, I made a decision. Lily could stay. Not forever without a plan, but long enough to breathe again. I helped her find temporary work through a friend, and Emma helped her apply for affordable housing. We created a small fund between us for her first month's expenses. It wasn't a fortune. It wasn't some miraculous rescue that fixed everything overnight. It was simply enough to give someone another morning. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected happened. Lily began changing. The frightened woman who had arrived with one suitcase slowly returned to life. She started laughing again. She found work at a bakery. She began taking evening classes. She planted flowers in the backyard because she said her mother had always loved flowers. Emma changed too. Our friendship wasn't instantly repaired. There were difficult conversations. I told her that kindness without honesty could still cause damage. She told me she had spent most of her life believing that asking for help made her weak. We both learned something. Sometimes people don't lie because they don't care about you. Sometimes they lie because they're terrified that the truth will make them lose the person they love. But fear doesn't excuse dishonesty. It simply explains why forgiveness can be complicated. Months later, I came home from work and found Emma and Lily sitting on the porch. There were 3 cups of tea on the table. Lily had baked a small cake. Emma looked at me and smiled. Then she joked that she hoped I wouldn't come home early again because apparently I had terrible timing. We all laughed. I looked at the house, the same stairs, the same hallway, the same old clock. But it didn't feel like the same house anymore. It had become a place where someone had been given another chance. And I realized something I would never forget. That night, Emma had told me, "Don't go upstairs." She thought she was hiding a problem. But upstairs wasn't a betrayal waiting to destroy our friendship. It was a human being waiting for someone to believe she was worth saving. Sometimes the door we are most afraid to open is the one hiding the opportunity to become a better version of ourselves. Emma could have continued lying. I could have chosen anger. Lily could have disappeared into the world believing nobody cared. Instead, 3 imperfect people chose honesty, forgiveness, and kindness. And that choice changed all of us. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes people deserve second chances, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach someone who may need a little hope today. And before you leave, I want you to comment one word: kindness. Because you never know when one small act of kindness might become the reason someone survives their darkest night. I still think about that night sometimes. The suitcase by the door. The silence in the hallway. Emma standing beneath the stairs, terrified. And the woman waiting upstairs with everything she owned packed into one small suitcase. I came home expecting a surprise. Instead, I discovered that home isn't really defined by walls, furniture, or keys. Home is the place where someone is allowed to tell the truth. Home is where broken people are given time to heal. And sometimes, home is simply the place where somebody opens a door and says, without hesitation, "You can stay until you're okay." That night, Emma had been afraid I would go upstairs. But I'm grateful that I did. Because sometimes, the truth waiting upstairs is painful. And sometimes, it is exactly where your heart is supposed to go.